What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was summoned by Boa Hancock, and became the warrior she couldn't command? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Great, another jungle. Why do I got to go through another jungle? Quit your whining brat. Let's get started and see what this world has to offer. Oh no, I'm not making that mistake twice. I'm gonna find out what I can on my own before I enter 6th Path Sage mode. Whatever you do, just do it. We're all eager to see what kind of mess this world's in. Right, let's get started. Naruto ran through the jungle to see if he could find anyone that he could get some information out of. It was a whole new start from square one again. He had no idea where he was, what the people were like, or what kind of problems they were facing. But he'd find out and do his best to make things right. That was his main goal. As he was running, he had to dodge a few arrows that were aimed at him, and when he heard the loud impacts they made when they hit something, he turned around to see that they had broke through a few trees and cracked several boulders. Last I checked, arrows shouldn't do that. Naruto turned around once more as more arrows were shot at him, as he dodged most of them but caught one that would have hit him in the chest. At least you know there are people in this place, said Seiken. Yeah, but if they're the shoot first, ask questions later type, I don't think I'm gonna get much information out of them. You do make a valid point, Naruto-kun, said Matabi. I gotta do this the old-fashioned ninja way. Naruto then disappeared from view as his attackers lost sight of him. He didn't bother to see just who attacked him, as he went in the direction he felt some potent energies come from. A little over 10 minutes later, he found himself overlooking a town bustling with activity. After just a few moments of observing from his perch on top of a cliff's edge, he noticed one thing in particular that stood out in this place. There was only women and young girls. Not a single man or boy in sight. Man, even the Amazons back on Sanctuary weren't this adverse to men. Well, this obviously isn't Sanctuary. But you definitely stick out like a sore thumb here. Hee hee, well that's what good old Henge's for. Naruto-chan is making a comeback. Naruto studied the women for a few more moments just to make sure he got the right style of clothes right, and he made the hand sign for the transformation, turning into his gender-bent form with 2 pigtails. What most of the women wore looked like fur bikinis, so a bikini wasn't really hard for him to do. He decided on an orange one with black tiger stripes going horizontally on the 2-piece swimsuit, along with a white cape that he saw a few women wearing as well. He blended in pretty well and no one gave him a second glance. He spent his time listening intently on any important conversations going on around him, most of which happened in cafes, oddly enough. After a few hours, he learned that he was on an island called Amazon Lily that was run by the Kuja pirates, with their captain and empress being a woman called Boa Hancock. Many of the women were basically fangirls of their empress and believed she was perfect and could do no wrong. He never really believed that anyone could be perfect. He himself was the furthest thing from the word, and he was awesome in his own opinion, so he was skeptical of that. He was also hearing that some of their warriors had spotted an enemy pirate within the jungle but had escaped them, and they were continuing the search. He was now walking close to the docks where the Kuja pirates were doing busy work, when he heard someone yell at him. You there, stop. Naruto, still in his transformation, turned around to see a petite woman with black hair with a long bang covering part of her right eye walking towards him. She wore an orange tank top and black panties and long stockings with garter belts, and also had a white cape over her shoulders. She had a pink snake coiled around her leg and arm. Who are you? I'm Naruto? I've never heard of you before, and I know all members of the crew. You know it's against the rules for Kuja citizens to wear a coat like that with the symbol of the Kuja pirates if they are not part of the crew. Naruto remembered he added that symbol to the back of the cape since he saw others have the same thing. It was a skull with 9 snake heads circling around it, making it resemble a flower almost. Oh, I forgot? Naruto then noticed that the snake she had was licking the air in front of it with its tongue, and after a moment it started to angrily hiss at him. He could see that the woman in front of him grew more suspicious as she narrowed her eyes and had a feeling he might be caught. You're coming with me. We'll see what the Gorgon sisters would do with you. Naruto didn't want to blow his cover just yet and followed after her to meet with the rulers of this island. He was brought inside their palace and taken to a room that had the 2 younger sisters within. He remembered hearing their names also, being Sandersonia and Marigold. They were both very tall, and the older one had green hair and her head was abnormally large for her body, and he noticed she also had a thin forked tongue like a snake. The younger one had orange hair and was heavy set, but she carried a giant polearm on her back, so he knew she had the physical strength to back her up. The two sisters looked up when they noticed their fellow crew member walking in with an unknown woman. "What is it, Ran? Did you need something?" asked Sandersonia. The woman named Ran that escorted Naruto here moved closer to her superior and whispered in her ear what she first discovered and that her snake had its own suspicions. Sandersonia narrowed her eyes at Naruto and moved closer to him and began licking the air as well with her tongue. After a few moments she shot back in shock at what she found out by tasting the air around him. "How did you get here?" "I walked." "What is it, sister? What did you find?" asked Marigold. "He is a man. Men are not allowed on Amazon Lily." "But how? She looks like a woman, and we're on the calm belt. It should be impossible for a single man to get here on his own." "I don't know how, but I do know that is no woman." Okay, you caught me." Naruto put up his hands in surrender and dropped the transformation, being his usual self, wearing an open orange jacket with black sleeves and cuffed bottom hem with a white shirt and black pants and shinobi sandals. Naruto eventually wanted to meet the leader of these people, so being caught wasn't really a concern for him. He could escape anything they put him in anyway. "What? Is he a devil fruit user?" asked Ran. "I have no idea what that is, but I'm pretty sure I'm not." "Who are you?" demanded Sandersonia. "My name's Naruto Uzumaki, and I would appreciate it if I could get some information. You are in no position to demand anything of us. You have entered our land without our permission and will not go unpunished," said Marigold. "Look, I'm not here to start trouble, okay? I didn't know this place was off limits, and it wasn't even my fault that I ended up here, it just happened all right. I just want some basic information that a 6-year-old would probably know, nothing invasive or life-threatening. Just basic information, that's it." "What do you mean that you just happened here? How does one just end up on an island in the calm belt of all places?" asked Ran. Thoughts a little hard to explain. No more excuses. We'll take him to Hebehime-sama, she'll decide what to do with him. Let the crew know you found a man on our island, but only them. Keep this incident from the regular citizens for now, Ran," said Sandersonia. "Yes, ma'am." Sandersonia and Marigold escorted Naruto to the Empress throne room, where she was just relaxing with a glass of wine. She definitely had the looks fitting of an empress. She was tall with straight, long, black hair, a red sarong around her hips that covered most of her legs except for a long slit, and a revealing red blouse that showed ample cleavage from her large bust. She also had a large white snake with red spots wearing a skull on its head, as she used it as a makeshift chair. "Holy shit, she's hot. Careful, Naruto-kun. What would your wives think?" said Matabi. "Yeah, that's right. My wives were totally hot too. I will not be distracted." Sandersonia, Marigold. "What is a man doing here?" asked the Empress with an edge to her voice. "We don't know, sister. He says he just showed up here somehow, but all he's asking for is some basic information." "Oh, he's looking for information, is he? Then of course we'll give it to him, anything he wants." It would be in poor taste as an empress to deny a man such a simple request. Naruto could hear the sweetness in her voice, but he could tell that she was lying. She was just putting on a show for his benefit, to make him drop his guard. "But first, could you grant me one request in exchange?" Sure." Naruto knew she was up to something, but he wanted to see what she would do. She held out her hands and put them in a heart-shaped gesture and yelled out, "Mero Mero Mello." Naruto Uzumaki was turned to stone. His stone statue stood there with a confused look on his face, not knowing what was going on. But unknown to the Empress, the effects of her attack were not fully successful. "What the fuck just happened? Looks like you got turned to stone," said Yuki. "Well, at least it's not natural energy that did it, otherwise I'd be really fucked." "Well, you better think of something quick, brat. 'Cause I don't think they want to keep you. Destroy him and have someone else clean up the mess." "Yes, sister." Marigold removed the polearm from her back and held it in position to swing at the statue to do away with another of her sister's victims. She swung down hard and made contact, but she and her sisters were surprised when it didn't immediately break. All she succeeded in doing was knock over the statue onto its back, but there was no damage whatsoever. "How did that not break?" said Sandersonia. "Perhaps sister's powers are growing and the statues are becoming stronger? Perhaps, but just break him this time. We can think on that later." said Hancock. Marigold tried again and again and again, but it just wouldn't break no matter how hard she tried. She was a bit out of breath from trying so hard, and her two sisters came closer each time she couldn't break it, to stare at the statue and see if there were any cracks. They were all in silence, not believing it wouldn't break after all this time, but before she could try again, they heard it crack. Then they saw many cracks running all along the statue, but before they could be relieved that it was finally breaking, they saw golden light emanating from every crack. Soon after, the stone exploded outward, and Marigold had moved in front of her sisters with her back turned and held them close to shield them with her own body. She gasped out in pain as the stone shards ripped through her coat and cut into her back. Marigold! Her sisters yelled out, worried for her, as they removed her coat to look at their sister's back to assess the damage. But they were soon distracted by the golden glowing light from the figure now standing behind them. Geez, what the shit, lady? That is so not cool. Naruto stood up from his downed position in all his golden glowing glory and black markings that is sixth path sage mode. When he looked up and saw what happened to the youngest sister, as she was in considerable pain, he moved quickly. Shit, did I do that? I am so sorry. I'll fix it. As he placed his hand on her back and started healing her, he noticed a brand mark there just beneath her bra strap that he knew nothing about and thought she might want to keep it in case it meant something important to her. He's heard of people putting brand marks on themselves, sort of like a tattoo but a little more extreme, so he didn't know if she had this done to herself or not. There, all done. Marigold, are you okay? Said Sandersonia. Sister, he saw it. He saw my mark, she said in a frantic whisper, but they could tell she almost wanted to cry at such a thing happening. Hancock rounded on him, an angry visage marring her face. You saw, didn't you? Answer me. Naruto wasn't answering her because as the power of his sixth path sage mode spread out further and further, far beyond their island, he felt something he definitely did not like. Despair, fear, anger, humiliation, hopelessness. Some of the worst emotions there were. There was much of it all over the world, but a large majority of it came from one place. What is in that direction? He said simply, emotionless. His head was turned to the northeast as he put all his focus in that one area. Many footsteps could be heard running towards the throne room as the doors were suddenly thrown open to reveal many of the Kuja pirates. Hebehime-sama, what is wrong? We can all feel. Get out. Do not come in here. Hancock yelled. One of her pirates noticed that Sandersonia moved to block the view of her sister's back from everyone as she yelled to the others. Marigold-sama's back is exposed. Hurry, everyone escape. The rest all followed suit as they yelled and screamed in fear that the curse of the Gorgon sisters would curse them as well. What is over there? Naruto asked again. This time he looked right at the Empress. His eyes were showing an intensity to them that she had only seen once before, in the fish man who freed her and her sisters all those years ago. What? She didn't know why she stuttered. She was an empress, the most beautiful woman in the world. She does not stutter. But she couldn't help it. The power he was giving off was finally starting to affect her as her emotions were winding down. She could see that her sisters were being affected too, as they couldn't find the strength to stand at the moment but looked in her direction for guidance or reassurance. She thought to herself as she was unable to move in his presence, just as her sisters. It can't be. Is this him exerting his will? Conqueror's Haki. This man has the qualities of a king. In that direction. I can feel it. Despair, hopelessness, fear. All of the worst emotions you can think of are just lingering, festering in one area. And it's in that direction. Naruto pointed to the northeast this time to make sure she couldn't misunderstand him. She took the time to finally think about his question and the direction he was indicating. And her eyes widened slightly as she knew exactly what was in that direction, and the emotions he described were the same ones she and her sisters felt when they were trapped there. Maria Joy. Her hands immediately covered her mouth after she said it. That was not a place she ever wanted to remember, let alone utter its name. Her sisters looked at her in shock as they didn't even want to think about it either. Who is in Maria Joy? What is over there? Stop it. Just stop it. We don't want to hear this. Screamed Sandersonia. She and Marigold were slumped on the floor hugging each other and had tears running down their faces, and Hancock was nearly catatonic. It seems this subject was worse than Naruto thought it would be. He thought back to this short encounter and thought about everything that went on here. Despite him not paying particular attention, he did hear the youngest sister almost crying when she said he saw her mark, and then the Empress yelled at him about seeing it also. Then the pirates that came barging in here ran away after their Empress yelled at them and realizing the youngest sister's back was exposed. So if he had to guess, that mark is definitely something that was not done to her willingly. In order to try and gain some of their trust, he decided that he would heal it and see what happens. Naruto entered a partial sixth path sage mode as his eyes turned yellow, his pupils changed into a horizontal bar and vertical slit, and his right hand and forearm started to glow in the same bright gold as before and placed it on Marigold's back. She jolted at his touch and started to go limp in her sister's arms as she began softly sobbing into her sister when he touched her. It not only brought back painful memories as his warm hand reminded her of the hot brand they used to mark her, but it felt like he was taking away her strength. "Sister, my strength." When Hancock saw this, she charged at him trying to get him away from her. "Don't touch my sister." She threw a haphazard punch towards him, but she was still too emotional to properly focus, and he easily caught it with his left hand across his body and held her in place as his right hand went back to normal as he finished. Hancock immediately knelt in front of her sister and faced her to see if she was okay. "Marigold, are you okay? What happened to your strength?" "I don't know, I can feel it coming back, but," his touch felt like sea stone. "It was making me weak." "You have sea stone on you? But how, aren't you a devil fruit user?" said Sandersonia. "I have no idea what sea stone is or what a devil fruit user is." "Then how were you taking away her strength?" demanded Hancock. "I have no clue, that never happens when I do that. It's usually the opposite, people tend to feel revitalized after I healed them." "Heal? Heal what? Take a look for yourselves." Naruto indicated towards their sister's back to show them, and they both moved behind her to see. What they saw shocked them as their knees wavered and they fell to them. They looked over their baby sister's back and saw nothing but unblemished skin. That horrible mark that was put on her all those years ago was gone, not even a trace, or any indication that there was anything ever there. They couldn't stop the tears if they tried as they sobbed loudly and clung onto their sister's back and buried their faces into it as part of their dark past was erased right in front of them. "Sisters, what's wrong? What did he do?" asked a frantic Marigold. "It's gone. He took away your mark," Hancock said in a whisper, but her sister heard her clearly, but Sandersonia wanted to make sure she knew. "It's gone, Mari. It's really gone." "Really?" Sniff. "You better not be lying to me." "Never, not about this. Come on, look for yourself." Sandersonia dragged Marigold off her feet and towards Hancock's wardrobe where she had multiple mirrors going around in almost a full circle so she can see her reflection for herself. He could hear the two sisters shedding happy tears as Marigold saw for herself, and then he looked towards the Empress as she stood up and faced him. As Hancock looked at him, trying to recompose herself, she couldn't help but be grateful, but she also didn't want to trust him so easily after just one good deed, even if it was a major one. She decided she would at least hear him out. She wiped the unshed tears from her eyes and stood straighter as she addressed him. "What is it that you wanted to talk about?" "Sigh. I really kinda don't want to ask anymore." The Empress walked over to her snake throne and took her seat. "Yes, you wished to know about that place. Okay, let's just forget about that place and talk about something else. I'll be straight with you. I am limited in knowledge about the world right now. What I initially wanted to know was what's going on in this world today. Who are the major powers, is what I really want to know. Are you from an undiscovered island?" Yeah, I just left my home and everything's so different out here that I don't know where to start. I've never heard of any place outside my island. So I'm a little lost, you could say." "And how did you get here?" Someone transported me here. It was a freak accident and something went wrong and I got transported to a random place. I don't even know how to get back, so I'm kinda stuck here." "I see." She could tell that his story was off, but it didn't sound like he was completely lying either. "Very well, we will educate you on what you need to know as thanks for removing that mark from my sister." Her two sisters were now standing on either side of the Empress throne ready to contribute if they could. "Thanks, I appreciate it." They first told him about the devil fruits and the mysterious powers they give to those who eat them. They told him of the three types being paramecia, the most common, that give their users physical superhuman abilities. Then there are the zone-type users that can transform into various animals, including prehistoric animals or mythological creatures. Finally, the Logia type, which is the rarest, allows the users to transform themselves into an element, making most physical attacks against them useless. They then explained how seawater and sea stone are a devil fruit user's greatest weakness when they come in contact with it. But they were curious as to how he made their sister weak when he touched her. I can tell you that I definitely haven't eaten any fruit like that at all because I can still swim in the ocean. How did you drain Marigold's strength, and how did you even break free from my attack in the first place? I used Sage Mode to break free of that stone shell, and by the way, that wasn't very nice, you know. Impossible. That attack should have turned you completely into stone. Well, it would have, but I have experience in avoiding turning to stone. I encased my entire body in chakra before that attack hit me, but I still couldn't break out of it under my own strength. And since I was already unable to move, I just absorbed the natural energy around me to go into 6th Path Sage Mode, and then I broke free. What is this Sage Mode you keep talking about? Asked Marigold. It's a form I can take that will augment my abilities, making me stronger, and increasing my defense. Armament Haki too, said a shocked Hancock, realizing he can utilize all 3 forms of Haki at such a young age, at least as far as she knows. Haki? What is Haki? Haki is a form of spiritual power that can be used by anyone if their will is strong enough. There are 3 forms of Haki, and 2 forms can be trained to become stronger, but the 3rd form is only ever found in a select few. If what you say is true about that sage form you spoke of, then from what I have seen, you are able to use all 3. Observation Haki is the ability to detect the presence of others without using your natural senses, but to be able to sense the people all the way to Redline. That kind of sensory perception is unheard of. Yeah, I'm a pretty decent sensor in my normal state as I am at this moment. I can sense everyone on this island right now if I really concentrate, but the form you saw me take with the glowing and the black markings is a higher form of Sage Mode. With enough time in that state I can sense everyone on the entire planet. That's why I could sense those people suffering so far away. What? The entire planet? How is that possible? Exclaimed Sandersonia. Uzumaki Naruto is just that awesome. So what are these other forms of Haki? Armament Haki allows the user to create a form of invisible armor around oneself from the strength of their will for increased defense and sometimes offense. But those with stronger Haki or stronger physical strength can break through Armament Haki. This type of Haki can also allow someone to fight a Logia user, as it has been known to be able to cause physical damage when used against them. I can use my chakra and Sage Mode to beef up my defense, but it's more dependent on the amount of chakra and the density that I make it, but I guess I can control it at will, so it's like the same thing, I suppose. What is chakra? Asked Marigold. Chakra is my energy source. It is a mixture of physical and spiritual energies that my body produces, that I use for my techniques. We've never heard of such a thing before, said Sandersonia. Didn't think you would. It's kind of exclusive to the people where I come from. Now what's this last form of Haki? Conqueror's Haki is the most rare form of Haki, and it cannot be learned or trained in. Only those who are said to be chosen can use this Haki. This type of Haki allows the user to exert their will over others. Those who are weak-willed will pass out when this form of Haki is used against them, but to stronger people like me and my sisters, it can make us stay rooted to the ground, just like you did to us earlier when you took that glowing form. We were unable to move when we were in your presence. I myself am a user of Conqueror's Haki, but even I was not able to fully withstand your will. Towards the end, Hancock sounded a little angry that she could be seen as weaker than the man in front of her. I wasn't exerting my will over you, that was just the density of my chakra in that form. I can exert my will to intimidate others, but I had to do it consciously. I wasn't trying to intimidate you or your sisters at all. The 3 sisters were shocked by his words, because if that was just his power affecting them like that, then how would it feel if he really tried to exert his will over them? Just who is this man? I'm a little curious about what we were talking about earlier before we got into this Haki stuff. I want to know how I was taking away your sister's strength earlier, because that really doesn't happen. Would you mind doing a little experiment really quick to see if we can find out what went wrong? Why should we help you? Said Sandersonia. It's not my intention to hurt anyone, well, at least those that don't deserve it. I wasn't trying to take away your sister's strength, and I'd like to avoid doing so in the future with anyone else that might need my help. Very well. What is it that you would have us do? Said Hancock. I'm guessing that all 3 of you are devil fruit users, and you said that seawater and sea stone are your natural weakness. But I don't have either of those things on me, so it must have been my energy. I just want to make sure which energy it was that did it. How about as a control, one of you just shakes my hand without me channeling any sort of energy. Naruto then stuck out his hand for any one of them to take to try and confirm the theory he already had in his head. Sandersonia was the one to move forward and she hesitantly took a hold of his hand, but like he thought nothing seemed to happen as she didn't react in any way. Did you feel something, Sonia? Asked Marigold. No, I didn't feel any kind of reaction from touching him. Alright, let's try a different energy and see what happens. Naruto's hand and forearm began to glow, but it was not as bright as Sixth Path Sage mode. He was only using Kurama's chakra to activate Kurama mode without gathering any natural energy. Sandersonia once again slowly took his hand, but there was a reaction to it, but it wasn't one she was expecting. His energy felt like it was giving her strength and making her more invigorated. She immediately let go as her sister called out to her. What happened, Sonia? You looked like you were surprised. Did he do anything to you? Asked Hancock. And no, it felt like he was giving me strength. I could feel it coursing through me. It was a little intense. What? Then why did it feel like sea stone when he touched me? This isn't the same type of energy I used to heal you. It might look the same, but there are subtle differences. Watch, I'll show you now. Naruto then absorbed the natural energy around him and along with Kurama's chakra entered a partial Sixth Path Sage mode, and they saw as his forearm and hand became even brighter than it was before. This is what I used to heal you. You can see that it's a little brighter, and when I'm in the full cloak the markings are a little different compared to the form I took before this. Shake my hand now and let's see what happens. Sandersonia did so, but as soon as they touched, she reeled her hand back as if she was burned. That was it. It felt just like sea stone. I could feel my strength being drained. That's what I thought it would be, but just to make sure. Let's try it one more time, but with a less intense version of that. I just want to be completely sure. Naruto stopped the Sixth Path Sage mode and instead went into regular Sage mode without Kurama's chakra. They saw that his hand was no longer glowing, but saw the change in and around his eyes. Sandersonia took his hand again but pulled it back soon after. That was like the same, it was pulling my strength, but it was less intense and it wasn't taking it away as quickly. What does that mean? How are you able to turn your body into sea stone? Asked Marigold. I'm not turning my body into sea stone. Like I said before, when I use Sage mode I take in the natural energies of the surrounding area. I'm thinking that since there is a lot of ocean around your island, the natural energy I absorb must take in the properties of the water, which makes my Sage mode have the effect of seawater and sea stone on devil fruit users. Then that makes you the natural enemy to all devil fruit users. Hancock had a disturbed look on her face, realizing how dangerous this man can be against those who have eaten the mysterious fruits. If he decided to attack them they could be subdued very quickly, especially if he took that higher form of his Sage mode he showed them before. She needed to get this man away from her island as quickly as possible. You make it sound like I want to go hunting down devil fruit users or something. I can tell that you're more wary of me now, but I promise I'm not here to hurt you or cause any trouble. You don't have to fear me. The sisters just looked at him, studying him to find out if he held any kind of deceit, but they couldn't readily find anything that would give him away. They know he hasn't outright attacked them and he did heal their sister's scar, so they would give him the benefit of the doubt for now. They decided to move on and continue to explain the major leaders in the world to give him the information he initially wanted. For the next couple of hours the three sisters explained what they could, but they didn't know everything. The Kuja didn't usually bother with the outside world. Their pirate crew only left the island to restock supplies or patrol their waters. And on occasion hail a call from the world government, but they usually ignored those. Naruto learned that this world was almost entirely comprised of ocean, which further confirmed his theory about his Sage mode, and it was so big that a world map had yet to even be completed. The Empress showed him a small map of the paradise portion of the Grand Line with only a few places marked with names. He immediately noticed that Mariajoy was located on Red Line, which was the largest landmass there was on this planet. Everything else was just island after island. Amazon Lily was located on the Calm Belt, which he found extremely odd and thought it was impossible that no current flowed through it. They then explained to him about the Marines, the world government, pirates, the Shichibukai, and what they knew of the Yonko. Naruto had a serious look on his face as they finished explaining what they could to him. The world government is the one in charge of the majority of the world. And when he heard that the Red Line falls under their jurisdiction as well, which included Mariajoy, he knew that the government was most likely the cause for the suffering he felt coming from that direction. He needed to know more. He didn't think a government would be so careless as to allow undue suffering right beneath their noses. They had to be a part of it, but he needed to make sure. Thank you for your time. I appreciate everything you told me. You're welcome. It is the least we could do for what you have done. You know, if you and your other sister have the same marks on you, I can remove them as well. The sisters tensed at that. They didn't think he would be willing to do the same for them, and they didn't even want to mention that they had the same mark, but he figured it out on his own. Hancock was still wary of trusting him and figured he would want something else in exchange for such an offer. They gave him information because he healed Marigold, but what would he ask for if he healed them as well? The price would undoubtedly be too high, but she had to know. And what would you want in return for such a service? She was afraid of what his answer would be. Would he want money, a ship, some of her women, one of her sisters, her own body? Any man who can be turned to stone by her has lust in his heart for her, so she knows that is a high possibility. But could she do that? She didn't want to give anyone her body, but she didn't want Sandersonia or herself to bear that mark anymore either. She wouldn't know what to do. Nothing. You've given me enough. I can handle things from here. Also, if there is anyone else on your island that needs medical help, I'm willing to treat them as well. What? Her sisters were just as surprised as she was that he would ask for nothing and even offer to help others on their island. I don't need you to give me anything. I can figure stuff out on my own now. I'll have to infiltrate that place and find out what's going on there, but it'll be no biggie. Are you an idiot? Haha. I'm quite familiar with that name too, so I'm not bothered by it. A bunch of other people would agree with you. Do you think this some kind of joke? Only one person has ever broken into Mariajoy, and since then their fortifications have more than tripled. There is no way to enter that land unnoticed. Naruto gave the Empress a wide grin as he responded. Well, that just makes it more interesting. But whatever defenses they have still won't stop me. Why? Why would you want to enter that place? For what purpose? Naruto's grin faded as he had a serious expression on his face once more. To put a stop to whatever is going on there. Like I told you before, in that state you saw me in, I can feel the emotions of others very clearly, and what I felt is not acceptable. I understand there are times when negative emotions like that will inevitably make their appearance throughout any person's life, but when I felt the number of people going through the same thing and with such intensity, it isn't something I can ignore. I am going to put an end to it. And I'll make sure it will never happen again. Impossible. The celestial dragons cannot be stopped. The Marines and the world government will not allow it. They are untouchable. No one is untouchable, no matter who they are. And who are the celestial dragons, if you don't mind me asking? Hancock and her sisters had fearful expressions on their faces and could no longer look at him in the eyes when he asked that. If it's something you don't want to talk about, then I won't insist. I'll keep my word and heal you and your sister, and I'll be on my way. I'll tell you, if only to make you understand that your goal cannot be reached. I'll tell you what we suffered through under the celestial dragons. The Kuja Empress told Naruto of what she and her sisters endured at the hands of the celestial dragons. It was not easy, as he could see all three of them breaking down in tears and sobs as old memories resurfaced. She explained that the mark he saw on her youngest sister was a brand they called the Hoof of the Soaring Dragon, which was to mark them as being less than human and property of the celestial dragons. She told him if they were to ever discover that they held this mark, they would be hunted down to be returned to their former owners. That is why they had to keep it so closely guarded, even from their own crew. As she continued, Naruto stayed quiet, but his emotions were just as turbulent, but whereas theirs were of sadness and shame, his were of fury and contempt. He actually scared the sisters a couple of times when the floor beneath him started to crack because he was leaking his chakra violently due to his anger. The Biju that dwelled within him were just as disgusted by the recount of their dark past. They were eager to help their container put an end to it. Sniff, do you see now? The celestial dragons are the world nobles. They contain within them the blood of the world government's creators, and the government allows them to do anything they wish. If anything were to happen to a world noble, the full might of the world government would stop at nothing to ensure their safety. Do you see now how futile your endeavor really is? Whatever happens within the boundaries of Mariajoy can never truly be stopped. Yes, I understand. Thank you for telling me about your past. I know it was difficult for you, but I appreciate all the information you have given me. Then you will stop your efforts to infiltrate that place? Not at all. Have you heard nothing I said? Yes, Empress, I heard everything you said loud and clear, and it's all the more reason to put a stop to it. This government, if you can call it that, is an utter failure in my eyes. As far as I'm concerned, they don't know the first thing as to what a government's purpose really is. And I am more than willing to educate them. The sisters could feel the anger in Naruto's voice as he referred to the government. He was really against what they stood for. That is utter nonsense. The way you speak, you will have the entire world against you. One man cannot fight the entire world. That won't stop me from trying. You'll die. You shared something deeply personal and traumatic with me, a complete stranger. So allow me to share something with you. You might think me arrogant or maybe insane, but I have endured wars and battles with beings that could utterly decimate entire planets if given the time or opportunity. And I have overcome them. Not on my own by any stretch, but compared to them, a simple government will not be enough to stop me. How can you expect us to believe something like that? And the world government is anything but simple. Everyone from captain and above are the elite of the Marines, and the admirals are among the strongest people in the world that won't hesitate when they are called into battle. They are the true power of the Marines and the world government. Then let me show you. Naruto then stuck out his fist in front of the three sisters, which had them confused as they didn't know what he wanted, and seeing this he elaborated to them. Bump your fists into mine and I'll show you a glimpse of the things I've seen and done. The sisters were hesitant and wary, but after a few moments, Hancock slowly moved her fist forward, deciding to give this man a chance. Her sisters followed soon after, as they did not want their older sister to be alone. They would always walk beside her. As soon as all of their fists touched, they could feel a warmth spread over them, and then their vision went white. Visions quickly came to them as they saw different battles that he fought in. He and a small army fought a giant monster with 1 eye and 10 tails that would probably be the most terrifying creature they would ever see. He and a few others fighting a woman with horns that looked to have transported them to different worlds at a moment's notice, and could kill anything instantly by turning them to ash. They saw the destruction left behind from a massive attack between two gigantic beings looked to be made completely of energy. One a massive fox with 9 tails, 3 faces and 6 arms, and the other a massive purple warrior in samurai armor with lightning coming from its back wielding a bow made entirely of electricity. The scenery then shifted to a different battlefront, where hordes of grotesque monsters came out by the hundreds, attacking him and a different group of warriors. They saw him run right through them with ease, not slowing in the slightest. He fought off giant monsters with his bare hands or with grossly destructive attacks that left very little in its wake. The last image they saw was the face of a giant monster that they could only describe to be pure evil, with nothing but hatred and malice emanating from its entire being. The first and last images they were given of those two monsters would probably give them nightmares. As the visions left them and they returned to the present, they couldn't help but be speechless and terrified of the things they saw. The battles I have lived through are not ones that many people would be able to survive. Again, this might sound arrogant, but if I had not been there to fight those battles, many more would have been killed, or those worlds might just have been lost entirely. What are you? What do you mean worlds? Sigh. I was not completely honest with you in the beginning. I am not from an undiscovered island. I am from a different world entirely. It is true that I had just left my home and was transported here, but it was no accident. I honestly had no control over what world I would end up in, and I don't have a way to get back, so I am essentially stuck here. That is why I had no knowledge of this place, because it is the first time I have set foot here. Do you really expect us to believe you are from a different world? Said Sandersonia. You saw my memories, didn't you? Do any of those things look like they exist in your world? Sandersonia was stuck on what to say to that, because none of what they saw looked familiar to them. And she and her sisters prayed that none of it did exist in their world. If what you say is true, then why were you transported to our world? You said that it was no accident that you are here. So what is your purpose? Said Hancock. My purpose is to save lives and help people in need, and those people in Mariajoy are the first on my list. I don't care how big the world government thinks it is. I don't care how many people they throw at me. I'll run right over them if it means I can give innocent people who are suffering a chance at a better life. No one deserves what you three went through. No one's life is worth less than any other's, and no one has the right to own another person. Slavery is one of the most disgusting things humans have ever done to each other, and I will not allow it to continue. Hancock's eyes were full of unshed tears as she heard him speak. He didn't think they were less than human because of the mark that marred their bodies. She was always afraid of what others would think if they knew she was a slave, perhaps even turn them in to receive a bounty. That is why she always put up the facade of the arrogant empress so that no one would question her or her sisters, so they would continue to believe they were higher status than they truly thought themselves to be. The way he spoke, there was no doubt in his voice, only a resolute conviction and the utter belief in his ideals. With the visions she saw, she wants to believe in him, to believe that he's strong enough to challenge the world and come out on top. She wiped away her tears as she sat straighter to address him. "Thank you for your words. I wish I could openly give you my support, but, quote, I know. I figured your status as Shichibukai is only to keep you and your people safe, so I understand that openly siding with me would make you and your people a target for the world government. Yes, but all the same, I do hope that you succeed in your goal, no matter how lofty it may be. If you ever need aid in the future that does not openly pit us against the world government, then the Kuja will do what they can to help you. Thank you. I appreciate the offer. Let me get rid of those scars on you now, so you won't have to bear their mark on you any longer. Since your devil fruit users all have to use the form that doesn't use natural energy, so it will take a bit longer to heal you, so just bear with me a moment. Just turn around and give me your backs, no need to take off any clothes, and I should have it done in a couple of minutes. You don't know how much this means to us. We can't thank you enough. Just as long as I can take away some of your pain, it's enough for me." As Hancock and Sandersonia turned their backs to face Naruto, the Empress felt her heart skip a beat from the words he just spoke to her. She could feel her face getting red and her heart beating faster, as she felt his warm hand on her hair and then pressed into her back, and could feel his energy seeping into her to heal and take away that mark. It was just as Sandersonia said earlier, his energy was revitalizing, but it felt so serene to her. The depressing thoughts she had before from recounting their past were melting away, and she felt warm and safe. After a few minutes, the loss of his warm hand had her missing the connection, but she had no time to dwell on that as both her sisters dragged her over to her wardrobe to check to see if the mark was really gone. Marigold stood in front of the opening to give them more privacy, and Naruto could hear them laughing and crying in joy at them all no longer burdened with that horrid reminder of their past. They all felt truly free from slavery, now that their marks were gone. After a few more moments, the Gorgon sisters came back to him with a few happy tears staining their faces. "Thank you for keeping your word. This means so much to us. What will you do now? Do you need a ship maybe? Or is there anything we can help you with now? I would appreciate it if you could keep my story to yourselves for now. I don't really want too many people knowing about that just yet. I can tell you three are good people, so I feel I can trust you with a little of my past." Hancock blushed a little harder when he said she was a good person and could feel her heart beating faster. "Of course, we will keep your secret safe." Naruto looked outside and saw that it was already the start of the evening, but felt that shouldn't stop him right now. "Well, I guess it's later than I thought it was, but I have a lot of ground to cover. I should get going." "Why, you don't need a ship to start your journey?" Hancock still had a blush on her face as her heart was racing faster. Her sisters were a bit surprised she would insist on helping him, as she had never really offered any assistance to anyone, especially a man they just met. It was a different side to her they haven't seen yet. "No, that won't be necessary. For how far Mariajoy is, a ship would take too long. I want to get there as soon as possible, so I'll just go my own way." "I see. When will we see you again?" "Not really sure." The Empress' heart seemed to sink at that response. She felt a pit in her stomach and she didn't know why. "But if you girls ever need any help, I'll gladly come back if you need me. So here, take this." Naruto held one of his Hiraishin kunai by the blade to give to Hancock. "What is this?" "It's a special kunai of mine that will let me come back here instantaneously. If you channel some of your energy into it or just throw it, it will act like a beacon to me and I'll feel its pull letting me know that you need me." Oh, thank you. I will be sure to use it if we need your help." Hancock held the kunai to her chest, mindful of the blades, holding it tight as if it were a lifeline. Her heart seemed to relax a little knowing he was a short throw away. "Well, I'll let you three get back to whatever it was that you were doing. See y'all later." Naruto then moved to the balcony through the open double doors, and the three sisters saw what looked like 6 insect wings sprout out of his back as he jumped the sky and took off at incredible speed. "What is that man? Do you really think he's from a different world?" asked Marigold. "I don't know. No normal human can have powers like that without some kind of devil fruit. And with the things we saw him do in his memories, he has far too many abilities that a single fruit can give to someone," said Sandersonia. "What do you think, sister?" Marigold asked to Hancock as her cheeks were still rosy and she continued to hold on tight to that kunai. "Sister? Huh? Oh, why yes. What is it? Are you okay?" asked Sandersonia. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? You just seem a little preoccupied, but anyway. Do you think we can trust him? He took away our marks. With that, we are truly free. We don't have to hide in fear or shame anymore. That is all I need to trust him." The two younger siblings listened to their sister's words and realized she is right. He didn't do anything to harm them, but instead took away something they thought they would have for the rest of their lives. And in exchange, all they did was give him information that wasn't exactly a secret or could be used against them. They all felt that they really did get the better end of the deal. Naruto had been flying over the ocean for a few hours now using Chomei's chakra to create wings for himself. It was still the middle of the night, so it was very dark, but all he had to do was head straight in one direction and he would get there eventually. As he continued moving forward, he could see daylight up ahead of him, which was strange because it was still nighttime where he was currently. He would eventually come to terms that this new world he was on was very strange and the proper laws of physics, astronomy, even common sense and many other things did not apply to this world. He came within the area that the sun was shining brightly, and from several kilometers away he could see many plumes of smoke rising in a single area. He felt that if there were people in trouble he couldn't just ignore them, so he made a slight detour to investigate what was going on. From up in the sky, high enough where no one could see him, he had a bird's eye view of the entire island, if you could call it that. He saw a giant hole in which the ocean was falling into, making a massive circular waterfall. In the center of that hole was a large landmass that was connected to a smaller piece of land that was on the rim of the waterfall connected by an earth bridge. How that thin piece of land was holding up the large island was anyone's guess. If that land bridge were to be destroyed, the whole island would fall in the massive hole in the ocean. On top of the island was a large city with many buildings that were now broken and burning as there looked to be a war going on below him. He didn't know what the fight was about, so he felt he shouldn't just jump in without knowing anything. He made his way closer, and the closer he got he could see many flags bearing the symbol of the world government and many soldiers in white uniforms carrying the marine symbol and many men in black suits he assumed also worked for the world government. He saw that much of the fighting with the soldiers looked to be over for the most part as the trail of destruction led to a building at the end of the island, that he overheard some soldiers calling it the courthouse, that faced another giant building that bore the name Eni's Lobby. There looked to be a drawbridge that connected the two buildings, but the bridge was pulled up so it left a massive gap between them. In order to keep out of sight, he activated his transparency technique to keep anyone from noticing him and made his way over to the larger building across the raised bridge. He saw a group of 6 people. Well, one looked like an animal-human hybrid, but he's seen stranger things, on top of the courthouse. This group did not look like any Marines or world government soldiers, so it was safe to say that they were the ones who were fighting them. Across from them on the Eni's Lobby building was another group of people, most of which were in suits. One person had a weird leather mask, and another was wearing a Speedo, but the person he took more note of was the woman in cuffs standing there with a determined look on her face. He stopped the flow of Chomei's chakra to take away his wings, and he fell towards the front of the building and used his chakra to stick to the wall and slide down closer to listen to what they were saying. One of the men in suits looked up to where he was as he slid down, but with his shinobi training there was no way that he heard him, so this guy must have better awareness than the others as he seemed to stare at Naruto for several moments. "What are you staring at, Rob Lucci? Can't you see I'm on the brink of making history? My promotion depends on this." "It's nothing." Naruto could immediately tell that he doesn't like the guy with the mask, but he's got to admit, this Rob Lucci guy has sharp instincts. It looked like the group on the courthouse came to save the woman in cuffs as they were yelling at each other back and forth trying to convince her to go back with them. He was a little put off at how insistent she was on dying. He listened intently as the woman he heard called Nico Robin told her story. How her homeland was destroyed by something called a buster call because they were researching ancient history that the government deemed illegal. They even put a bounty on her as a child because she survived the attack and made everyone believe she was dangerous. The more he heard, the deeper this world government was getting on his shit list. It looked like their arguments were coming to an end when the leader of the small group across from them told the one with the long nose to shoot down the flag of the world government. "Robin, I need to hear it from you. Say you want to live." It took her a few moments before she gave her answer as tears were freely flowing down her face, and she yelled out to them, "I want to live. Take me out to the sea with you." Naruto could see the happy expressions on their faces as she told them she wanted to be rescued. He couldn't help but like this bunch. They took their friendships seriously and were willing to fight a war to save each other. Then things went kind of weird from there. The guy in the Speedo burned up some blueprints and the masked guy got pissed and pushed him off the building. He then saw the kid with the straw hat stretch his arms ridiculously far, grabbing a hold of two of his crew members on either end of their group, and jump off the building, and then a train of all things came and jumped the half-lowered bridge as they and the Speedo guy landed on it, and they all crashed into the Eni's lobby building. He decided then and there that he wouldn't interfere with their fights as this was something personal for them, but he had a feeling that with their insane luck they wouldn't need his help anyway. However, that didn't just mean he was going to leave them hanging. He was going to tag along with Nico Robin, as Spandam and Rob Lucci took her away to get to the back of the building. He could tell that Spandam was a loud mouth and he felt that he could get some valuable intel by just sticking around him for a while. As all four of them walked the tunnels beneath the building, with them none the wiser to Naruto's presence, Naruto found that he really couldn't stand Spandam. He kept on gloating and taunting Robin, trying to make her feel worthless. He even tried hitting her when she would talk back to him, but Naruto was having none of that. The first time he tried to hit her, he simply blocked his hand, still without revealing himself, and all three of them stood there unsure of what just happened. Spandam thought it was a fluke and tried to hit her again but was blocked again by Naruto. Rob Lucci felt that presence again from before and tried to strike out at Naruto where he thought he would be, but he hit nothing but air as Naruto dodged him. Spandam kept trying and failing to hit Robin, and he just settled for yelling at her and somehow blaming her for being a demon and not being able to hit her. As they moved on, Naruto deliberately allowed his steps to be heard in the long hallway, and Rob Lucci stopped them a few times, because he could hear 4 sets of footsteps instead of 3. When he stopped them, Naruto would take a few more steps just so that the other two would hear them and then stop as they stood in an uncomfortable silence. He thought it was funny as hell, because Spandam looked really freaked out that these weird things were happening around them, and Rob Lucci would strike out again to try and hit something he knew was there but he could never hit it. That's when they all heard it. Robin. They all turned around and Naruto could see the expressions in their faces. Robin looked relieved, Spandam looked scared, and Rob Lucci looked like he was anticipating his fight with the Straw Hat Kid as he had a smirk on his face. Rob Lucci was eventually left behind as he stayed back inside a room to wait for his fight, and Spandam locked the door behind him and started shoving Robin forward up a staircase. Naruto saw that he took out that golden transponder he saw earlier and started speaking into it like a two-way radio. "Oi, come in CP9. What the hell are you guys doing? Don't you know there's a pirate on my tail? Are you listening to me?" Gasp. What the hell do you think you're doing? Huh? Spandam looked at Robin, who was looking at the Den Den Mushi in his hand, and saw that he was holding the wrong one. GG Golden Den Den Mushi. Shit, this is the baby Den Den Mushi. How careless. I activated the buster call. You idiot, hurry and call it off. What, call it off? Who do you think you're talking to? Haha, the buster call is probably exactly what I need. Yes, this is great. I'm the director of CP9. I invoked the buster call to ensure your safe delivery to the government. And better yet, this will guarantee the slaughter of all pirates on this island. Ha ha ha, don't be an idiot. I already told you. It isn't that simple. An attack like that is devoid of humanity. It will reduce everything on Eni's lobby to ashes. The buildings, the people, the whole island itself. You'll be sacrificing everything for just one petty goal. You have no idea what happened on Ohara 20 years ago. Of course I do. That place was just a useless pile of dirt as far as the world government was concerned. Since the plans for Pluton are gone now, you're the last remaining link to the ancient weapons. Enough military power to upturn an entire era is riding on this. If this is what it takes to obliterate those pirates from stealing you away from me, even if thousands of soldiers die, it is a necessary sacrifice for the sake of a glorious future. But, most importantly, this is gonna get me promoted. Does a human life mean nothing to you? Did you forget? CP9 is a secret government organization. If 100 deaths can save 1,000 lives, we will kill those 100 people without hesitation. True justice necessitates cruelty. Besides, if those idiot soldiers couldn't stop a few pirates, they probably deserve to die anyway. Ha 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 ha. Robin noticed, as he was laughing, that the other Den Den Mushi in his hand was turned on as their argument was broadcast for the whole island to hear, so she told him. That baby Den Den Mushi is still on. Huh? Oh shit. Did everyone hear all that? Cough. By the way, this is Straw Hat Luffy. Robin immediately leaned forward into the baby Den Den Mushi to warn everybody on the island. Everyone leave the island. A buster call is coming for Eni's lobby. Everyone on it will die. Shut your mouth. He moved to punch her face despite his many previous failures, and his wrist was caught in a firm grip, and the baby Den Den Mushi that was in his hand fell onto the steps beneath them. Spandam and Robin suddenly found themselves staring at the hand that was holding him back and then to the man that was standing beside them. I'm really tired of you trying to hit her, you know. What? Who the hell are you? If you couldn't tell yet, I'm the guy that's been walking right next to you this whole time. Why do you think you haven't been able to lay a finger on her since the start of your retreat? That Rob Lucci guy felt my presence a few times, but he was just too slow to get the drop on me. Rob Lucci and the other members of CP9 that could still hear their conversation from their own Den Den Mushi were shocked that there was someone else with their leader, and Rob was angry that that man avoided all his attacks and remained unseen. The same could be said for the Straw Hat crew. They didn't know who was with Robin and it worried them a little. But he did say he was protecting her from Spandam, so maybe he was on their side? Who are you? Are you from another division? Did the world government send in some backup to protect me? Ha ha ha, I knew it. They know how valuable I am. But why were you stopping me from giving this demon what she rightfully deserves? You know, I've been called a demon before too. I can't say that I really enjoyed that title. Who cares what we call her, she's a criminal. And soon the world will be a safer place with her death. Right after we take away everything she knows, that is. Sorry, but I can't let that happen. What did you say? Who are you? If I had to guess, I'm probably going to be the world's most dangerous criminal. Eventually. What? Monkey D. Dragon is the world's most dangerous criminal. How do you think you can compare to him? I have no idea who that is. Who are you? Asked Robin. My name's Naruto Uzumaki. What? Why did you answer her? 'Cause she's a lady. And you don't deserve those cuffs on you. Let's get those off of you. Naruto then tried using his strength to break the cuffs, even enforcing his muscles with chakra, but they wouldn't budge. That won't work, said Robin as she looked down dejectedly at his failure to free her. Ha 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 ha, are you an idiot? Those sea stone handcuffs are as hard as diamond. There's no way they can be broken with your bare hands. Ha 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 ha, let's try something else then. Naruto then went into a partial transformation of Sixth Path Sage mode as both of his arms were bathed in a golden fire, and he tried breaking her of her bonds once more. I told you, it won't work. It's sea stone, your devil fruit can't help you. You need the key, said Robin. Spandam just continued laughing at the futility of trying to break them, but then he went silent as they all heard a crack. Naruto put in some more effort, and soon many cracks started appearing all over the cuffs until they finally broke into tiny pieces. Spandam was rightfully shocked, as no one had ever been strong enough to just outright break sea stone cuffs like that. Everyone on Eni's lobby that could still hear their conversation through the baby Den Den Mushi yelled out in surprise too as they heard them break. The Straw Hats were relieved that Robin was free, and it seemed like that man was trying to help them, so they had one less thing to worry about as they turned back to their own fights against CP9. Robin just stared at her hands, finally free from her bonds after all this time. She felt her strength returning to her, and she looked at Spandam with an angry scowl and prepared to crush him, but she found Naruto there gently holding her wrists to keep her from doing anything. What are you doing? We can't just. I know, just, not yet. I want him to see what I have coming for his world government. What? You want to pick a fight with the world government too? You're just one man. What do you think you can do against the might of the world government? I'll show you in a minute, so just shut up and wait there. Naruto gave him a cold look as his pupils turned into slits, and Spandam shut up immediately, terrified for his life. But first things first, Naruto moved to pick up the Den Mushi so he could speak to everyone on the island. What the hell is this thing? A snail? This shit just keeps getting weirder and weirder. It's still on, you know. Oh, is it? Well anyway, hello. You can all hear me, right? Who is this? The entirety of CP9 yelled at Naruto through their own Den Mushi, wanting to know who was with their leader. Don't take that tone with me, you bunch of brats. All the members of CP9 were taken aback by his outburst, and everyone else on the rest of the island had sweat drops on their brow for the way he spoke to some of the most dangerous people under the world government. Robin and Spandam were just thinking to themselves that he didn't look any older than they did. He probably looked younger than most members of CP9. Now here's what's gonna happen. I'm taking your dumb leader and your former captive up top from wherever it is I am right now, and we're gonna go give a proper greeting to this Buster Call thing. So the rest of you pirate kids don't have to worry about that. I'll handle it. I'll keep your friend here safe, so just do what you gotta do, and you all will be reunited once again after you've taken care of business. This is Naruto Uzumaki signing out. How do you turn this thing off? In the room with Rob and Luffy, Luffy used Rob's distraction of listening to the Den Mushi and snatched it out of his hands to speak to Naruto. Hey, Haruto, hold on. It's Naruto. Until we get there, protect her. Please, I promise. Just wait, Robin. We'll all leave together. I have a good feeling about this guy. We can trust him. Wait for us. Robin had a few tears in her eyes as she listened to her captain and responded to him. I'll be waiting, Captain. With that, she took the snail from Naruto and turned it off for him. HMPH. You two really think you can escape this place? The might of the world government is headed straight here to ensure my victory. Didn't I tell you to shut up? You may have caught me off guard earlier, but I have nothing to fear. The Buster Call will come to bring back their hero. I am too valuable for the world government to lose. And you will not stop me. Funkfried. Naruto saw Spandam take out the sword he had on him and pointed at him, and it began to stretch as the head of an elephant took shape and its trunk took on the shape of the sword aimed to stab right through him. Naruto was not fazed by this, even though an elephant sword is a first for him, and he caught the blade in a vice grip and looked the elephant in the eyes as his turned to slits once more, and he squeezed its bladed trunk a bit, making the elephant whimper in pain and fear. Naruto let go of it and Funkfried then went back into its sword form, refusing to come back out again, even against Spandam's orders. Funkfried, get out here and kill him. I command you. He won't listen. He fears me more than he fears you. Now, we can't have you trying anything like that again, can we? Wait. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Please. Geez, grow a spine, will you? For all your babbling of how great and powerful the world government is, you sure are a coward, aren't you? What did you say to me? It looked like Spandam didn't like being called a coward as his expression darkened as he looked down and his hair shadowed his face. He yelled out in rage and threw a haymaker at Naruto, but he easily caught his fist and twisted his wrist, nearly breaking it as he cried out in pain, and then he kneed him in the gut, which caused spittle to fly out of his mouth as he collapsed to his knees and began coughing. Maybe you're not a total coward, but you are pretty weak. I know children that could throw a better punch than you, stronger too. What Naruto wasn't telling them was that those children he was talking about were his own children and grandchildren, so some could say that wasn't a fair comparison. As he was down on his knees, Naruto used his Mokuton to create his own shackles around his wrists behind his back. He then picked him up and threw him over his shoulder to carry up the stairs with Robin following him. You're a devil fruit user? No, just one of my many abilities. I'm not exactly normal for a human. Don't worry about it too much. What are we going to do? The Buster Call is coming. There is no escaping that attack. I said leave it to me, didn't I? You don't understand. Tell me, what does this Buster Call entail, exactly? Cough, haha. The Buster Call is the strongest military attack at the world government's disposal. That is absolute justice, said Spandam while still being carried over Naruto's shoulder. The world government doesn't see the people on the map. They just don't care if they erase an entire island off that map. That is the Buster Call, said Robin. Ha 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 ha. Exactly. 10 of the most powerful warships led by 5 of our strongest vice admirals will come here to ensure that justice is upheld. 10 ships, huh? Ha ha. That's great. What are you laughing about? This isn't a joke, yelled Robin. Ha, sorry. You're right, it isn't a joke, but this is just convenient for me. I wanted to send a message to the world government and this is the perfect opportunity to do so. Neither Robin or Spandam knew what Naruto was trying to do and they both thought he was either an idiot or insane. They soon reached the top of the stairs and exited through the door and found themselves outside on a long bridge facing giant gates that Naruto just took notice of. The gates of justice. Once they open, the warships will come through. That gate is just stupidly huge. Who does that? Hey, over here. Hurry up and save me, you idiots. Spandam saw a group of Marines in front of them and called out to them, catching their attention. They saw Naruto and Robin with a captive Spandam and moved to attack them to save their superior. Robin moved to try and take care of them, but he could tell she was still recovering from being in those cuffs for so long, so he moved in front of her to cut her off. I'll handle it. The Marines started to fire their guns, and Spandam was yelling at them not to hit him, but Naruto took out a kunai and deflected all the bullets coming at him as he kept his body in front of Robin. All the Marines and Robin looked shocked to see that he deflected them with a mere knife, but Naruto wasn't done yet. He then inhaled deeply and rapidly fired off miniature air bullets that the soldiers couldn't see very clearly, so they all ended up being hit. It wasn't a killing attack as they all were either knocked out or had the air knocked out of them, but either way they were all down and not getting back up anytime soon. One attack. Yup, that's all it ever takes really. Now let's continue. Robin was getting increasingly hesitant to keep moving towards the gates of justice, but her captain's words telling her to trust this man kept her nerves steady for the most part. As they arrived at the end of the bridge, they could see the gates of justice just barely opening, telling everybody that the Buster Call was on its way. This is taking too long. I guess I should just open it up for them. There's no way you can open the gates of justice. You really are an idiot. Naruto dropped Spandam to the ground and gave him a hard stare, frightening him on the spot. Only those close to me are allowed to call me an idiot. I want you to watch closely. I just recently started to learn about your world government and their bullshit practices. Your government has no idea what kind of shit they have headed for them. Listening to your drivel this whole time just proves to me that they aren't fit to be leading anything if there are people like you issuing orders. So I'm going to send them a message that even they should be able to read loud and clear. Naruto forced Spandam to stand up and face the gates of justice, and he entered one of his transformations only using Kurama's chakra. Robin and Spandam saw him glow a bright yellow that looked to be flames coming off his body, and black markings covering his clothes. He raised his right hand in the air, gathering chakra for a Bijudama. As it continued to grow into massive proportions, Spandam fell to his knees, not believing what was happening in front of him. Robin was also shocked as she could feel the energy he was giving off, and it wasn't even stopping yet. Behind them in the Tower of Justice, where some of the Straw Hats finished their fights, they could see Naruto's massive attack through a gaping hole in the wall where they stood. What the hell is going on? This is really scary, exclaimed Sogeking as he was running around frantically, while Zoro and Sanji looked on in awe. What is this guy? How can anyone do something like that? Said Sanji. I don't know, but Luffy said to trust him. So I will. How can you trust someone we don't even know, you stupid moss head? He's got Robin-chan down there. Shut it, you shitty cook. I trust Luffy, so if he says we can trust him, then I will. Sanji had nothing to say against that, as Luffy had a talent for reading people. He just didn't like that Robin was down there so close to an attack like that. What if she gets hurt? After building up the Bijudama into a massive attack, he shot the menacing ball towards the slowly opening gates of justice, traveling at a rapid speed and parting the ocean along the way. After a few moments, the attack hit and everyone's vision went white as it made contact with the gates. The gates were so massive that the explosion didn't completely destroy them, but a gaping hole was left and the world government symbol that was on the gates was utterly destroyed. Spandam looked up at Naruto in fear, as he stopped using the chakra cloak, and he saw what was left of the gates just barely hanging on their hinges. What are you? I'm pissed is what I am. But don't worry, I won't be firing off one of those again. I just hope I didn't scare them away. Your world government is in for a rude awakening. What did the world government do to you? Asked Robin as she was curious as to why he was so angry with them. To me personally? Nothing. Then why go against us? The world government does nothing but uphold justice. Your idea of justice and mine are two completely different things. I'm guessing that your government follows the idea of might makes right. That's why they'll trample over everyone who gets in their way without a second thought and justify it any way they want. Well, I plan to show them that their might isn't as great as they think it is. I'll completely destroy this world government if I have to and rebuild a new one from the ground up if that's what it takes. Are you part of the Revolutionary Army? Asked Robin. No, but if it's what I think it is, then I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks this government has to be changed. Anyone with a half-decent brain should see how immoral their practices are. What they did to your people, and what they're doing to others even as we speak, is unforgivable. Their justice is wrong, and I'm going to do what I can to make it right. Robin could tell that he meant his words. It was inspiring but no doubt a daunting task that he set for himself. At any rate, she is thankful to him at least for helping her. Thank you. Naruto gave her a wide grin as he said, "Don't thank me, I was just passing through. You should really thank those friends of yours. I heard all of your back and forth across the bridge earlier. They really care about you. I know, I was a fool. I plan to thank everybody once we finally get away from here." Good. It's hard to find people like that, who are willing to sacrifice themselves to protect what's precious to them. I like that. You kids are a special bunch. If you all keep that mindset, I can see you all going far in the future. What do you gasp? They're coming. From Robin's exclamation, they could see the 10 warships starting to exit the broken gates and started to fire off volleys of cannon fire that hit the ocean in front of them. This is where Naruto planned to send his message. If this buster call was their use of overwhelming force, then he would use his own. Hee, alright, let's show them a real buster call. Okay guys, come out one at a time and 15% worth of your chakra only. Each of us gets one ship, but I don't want you killing anyone yet. Most of those men are just lowly soldiers following orders, but they are still responsible for continuing to follow a shitty government like this. Other than that, have at 'em. Robin and Spandam were a little freaked out by Naruto seemingly talking to no one, but then they felt a spike of energy coming from him and what appeared to be a head began to emerge from his torso. The head of some kind of monster they couldn't identify came out, followed by a sandy brown body with blue vein-like markings going across it. Woo, yeah baby. Shukaku's back in action. It's been too long since I've been able to let loose. Hey, what did I just finish telling you? No letting loose. You hear me? Yeah. Always ruining my fun. And did you have to let us out on an ocean? You know my sand gets slow when it gets wet. Oh, deal with it, you big baby. You know how to water walk. Who are you calling a baby? I'm way older than you, you punk. I can still kick your ass. Not without Sage Mode you can't. You wanna bet? Will you two give it a rest? Shukaku, you should be grateful Naruto-kun even let us out this early, and Naruto-kun, would you please stop antagonizing him? Said Matabi as she was the next to emerge. Whatever. The two said in a huff as they looked away from each other, and Shukaku moved to engage the first ship from the left heading towards them. For how old you two are, you still act like brats. You still love me, Matabi. Nico, Robin, Spandam, and everyone else who could see, were shocked that these scary and deadly-looking beasts exited his body one by one, standing nearly 20 feet tall. They were even more surprised they were arguing with each other like they were family. After the first beast came a cat bathed in blue fire with 2 tails and yellow and green eyes. Then a gray and red turtle with a spiked shell, 3 tails and 1 eye emerged. Then a red gorilla with horns, orange eyes, and 4 blunt spiked tails. Soon after that a white horse with 4 horns atop its dolphin head and 5 tails came out. That was followed by a white slug that stood upright on 2 small feet and 2 equally small arms with 6 tails. Then a great horned beetle with gray carapace and 6 insect wings and 1 long tail came out. Then a flesh-colored ox head with a broken horn followed by a human-shaped torso and arms with 8 tentacles exited Naruto's body. And finally a great 9-tailed fox with red eyes and long ears came from within Naruto. All the Biju came out to help Naruto in dealing with the Buster Call. Normally they are far bigger than the forms they have taken now, even larger than they were during their time in the elemental nations, as they have all grown stronger, but this wasn't supposed to be a massacre. This was just a show of strength so the world government knows that Naruto isn't someone to be ignored, while also to bruise their ego and pride. If this was their ultimate show of military force, then they would decimate it and send them back crawling to lick their wounds. For better or worse, by the end of this fight, the higher-ups of the world government would know and eventually loathe the name Uzumaki Naruto. The sight of these nine-tailed beasts had everyone on edge. 8 of the beasts stood in front of Naruto, Robin, and spanned him on the ocean, while Shukaku couldn't wait and was already moving to engage the first ship. Without any notice, the 8 beasts let out an ear-piercing roar that could be heard for miles and miles around. Everyone closest to them besides Naruto had to cover their ears because it was so deafening, and many soldiers who were conscious and recovering from their fights with the Straw Hat Pirates stood in shock and fear as their monstrous roars met their ears. "Hey, what the hell? Why didn't you tell me we were doing the roar?" exclaimed Shukaku as he turned around to face his siblings as he felt he was left out. "It's kinda obvious this would be the time to do it," said Kurama. "It's not our fault you're so impatient," said Isobu. "Unlucky," said Chome. "You guys suck. You never tell me anything," said Shukaku as he turned around in anger heading back towards the ship he was aiming for, only to get hit in the face with a giant cannonball as he turned his head. The other Biju started snickering at their brother's misfortune as he was hit, but this only made Shukaku madder while his face was reforming with his sand. He then let out his own deafening roar and began yelling immediately after. "That's it, I'm going to fucking murder all of you." "Oi, we just talked about this, Shukaku," yelled out Naruto. "Gah, I hate this world already." Shukaku then continued to move forward, but this time he sent several cannonballs back to the ships that were aiming at him with his magnet release, and destroyed the front cannons of 3 of the warships. Way to keep a low profile, that idiot. And he wonders why I don't let him out that much with his loud mouth. I just hope no one thinks too much into that, Naruto said to himself, but unfortunately he was not so lucky, as one archaeologist heard the final outburst of the one-tailed beast, but decided to hold on to that information for later. Moments earlier aboard Vice Admiral Onigumo's warship, "What kind of monster can destroy the gates of justice?" exclaimed a soldier as they were just passing through the broken gates and saw large chunks of debris still falling off of them into the ocean. "Only a monster with absolutely no morals or sense of justice is responsible for destroying our sacred gates. Whoever it is, they have trampled on the ideals of our government and it will not go unpunished. We will face our enemy head-on without hesitation and they will know what true justice means," said Onigumo. Onigumo is a tall man wearing a gray suit with a green shirt. He has long spiky black hair with a perpetual frown on his face and is always seen smoking a cigarette. "Yes sir, anyone who doesn't lay their life on the line in the name of absolute justice will be court-martialed and summarily executed for their crimes by me personally. Sir." The 4 other vice admirals and commodores of the other 5 ships were having similar conversations with their men, although some, but not all, of them had the same beliefs as Onigumo's absolute justice. They wanted to ensure they were ready for whatever lay before them beyond the gates at Eni's lobby. Unfortunately, no amount of training would prepare them for what is awaiting them this day. As the buster call drew closer, one of the lookouts on another ship that had been the first to make it out of the gates, made a startling discovery. He saw 9 beasts atop the ocean, and even though they did not appear to be very big, as some of the giants under the world government were larger, they all looked extremely deadly. The lookout panicked, and one of the first beasts he had a good look at happened to be Isobu, and he assumed they were all sea kings. Sea kings. Sea kings at 12 o'clock. Open fire. Their ship was the first to open fire, and soon after that the others followed, but they were still a bit too far and only hit the ocean in front of the beasts. The vice admirals weren't very pleased that they opened fire without one of them issuing the order, but they all had the same targets in mind, so it wasn't too important right now. But Onigumo vowed to make sure whoever acted without orders would be punished severely. The cannon fire was put to an abrupt halt as they all heard the deafening roars of the monsters before them. Fear immediately set in on the lower-ranking soldiers of the Buster Call ships, but the higher-ranking officers and vice admirals did not allow it to affect them too much, and the vice admirals held their ground far better than everyone else. After some reprimanding from the leaders of their ships for allowing themselves to fear the enemy, the soldiers went back to work on bombarding their targets. One ship had finally hit their mark on the beast that was moving out before the others, and they all gave a cry of joy for their victory. Their victory was short-lived though, as the same beast they believed to have killed let out its own roar and continued to move forward. 3 ships targeted the same beast this time, but their attack was foiled when it was sent back at them and took out their front cannons. "Alright guys, I know this shouldn't be too much of a hassle for you, but I still want you to be careful. And remember what I said about the killing. Speak for yourself, brat. You're the one that better be careful. You're still more fragile than us in that form, unless you want to start off strong and use Sage Mode," said Kurama. "Nah, Sage Mode might be overkill, I'll be fine. Come on, it's me we're talking about." All the Biju, including Shukaku who could hear their conversation through their connection, turned around to just stare at him with a deadpan expressions. They all know that he likes to mess around and not take things too seriously, and he's usually the one who pays for it, so they were wholly unconvinced by his bravado. "Screw you guys. I know what I'm doing. I don't need you judging me." Naruto was about to jump off the end of the bridge he was on until he felt a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. He turned around to see who it was, but there was no one directly behind him and the hand was still on his shoulder, so he began to freak out. "There's a severed hand on my shoulder. Get it off. Get it off. Get it off. Get it off." The Biju could tell it was the woman, Nico Robin, who was trying to get Naruto's attention, as they could feel her energy and see she had her arms crossed in front of her with an amused smile on her face from his panic attack. The Biju just turned around to begin engaging their enemies, leaving Naruto to her. "You're quite amusing, aren't you, Naruto-san? Get it, huh?" Naruto turned around from hearing Robin's voice and saw her staring at him with a smile on her face and her arms crossed in front of her. He finally put two and two together and realized it was most likely her doing this. Is this your hand?" "That's correct. I ate the hana fruit. I am a flower woman." "Flower? Oh, I get it. You can bloom in different places, right? More or less. Thank God. I really thought I was being haunted or something by a possessed hand." "So, was there something you needed? I was just trying to stop you from going out there. It's too dangerous. There are at least 1,000 soldiers on each of those ships. Your friends look like they can handle themselves, but you would be safer if you stayed here. I appreciate the concern, but there's no way I'm letting those guys hog all the action. They'll just call me a wimp or a lazy ass and hold it over me for who knows how long, and I just can't let that happen. My pride and dignity as a man and shinobi are on the line. That is hardly something to risk your life over." "Haha, don't worry, I'll be just fine. I gave my word that I would handle this buster call and I intend to keep it." Naruto then turned to Spandam, who was still on his knees on the ground, and spoke to him. "You though, you're coming with me." What? Why? You're getting a front row view." Naruto grabbed Spandam and jumped onto the ocean to run to the only ship that hadn't been engaged yet, which happened to be between Kakuo and Seiken, leaving Robin behind to see him off. Unknown to Naruto though, Robin was using her powers to also watch and listen to what Naruto would do. She continued to hold her arms in her normal pose when using her powers, and bloomed an ear on the back of his jacket and an eye on the front to get a first-person view of what he would do or say. She had to admit to herself that she found him very intriguing. The power he had to destroy the gates of justice and bring out these beasts from within his own body was astounding. Even watching him run on the ocean was something she was not expecting, and proved to her that he was not a devil fruit user. But what caught her interest the most were the bits and pieces of conversation she heard from him. She remembers when he spoke to CP9, calling them brats and even referring to her and the Straw Hat crew to be kids. He was talking as if he were much older than all of them, even though he doesn't look to be any older than his mid-20s. And when that two-tailed cat had spoken about how old they were for acting like children, it made her even more curious about what age they could be. She had an instinctual feeling that these beasts were most likely hundreds of years old, but did that mean the same for Naruto? She couldn't help the archaeological side of herself of wanting to uncover his secrets. What can she say? The study of antiquity gets her curious. Shukaku, being the first to get to his targeted ship, did not hesitate to board it as he punched holes into the side of the vessel and began to climb up and engage the soldiers manning it. This ship had no vice admiral, so he was against regular soldiers of various ranks. They immediately began to open fire with their rifles, but the bullets had no effect on Shukaku as his sand just absorbed the metal balls into his body. The soldiers stood in a bit of fear seeing their attack have no effect on the beast, and what made the fear worse was when Shukaku gave a frightening smile, which admittedly would be frightening no matter what. Shukaku inhaled deeply and fired the hundreds of metal bullets within him in a rapid fire, purposely aiming just over their heads, as he would indeed listen to Naruto and avoid killing these soldiers here. His attack had far more power behind it than any marine rifle would, as the bullets easily cut through the giant mast of the ship and riddled the upper deck with an uncountable number of holes. The Marines took cover from the attack by diving on the ground, and when it was over, they looked above them as they could hear the ominous creaking of the mast breaking under its weight. They began yelling out to their comrades to get out of the way as the mast finally crashed down behind them, toppling over the second mast behind it and crushing the central structure on top of the ship. Shukaku was just getting started. He may not be allowed to kill anyone right now, but scaring them half to death was just as fun for the mad one-tailed beast. Several ships down from Shukaku, Chomei was the next to arrive at a warship, his ability to fly getting him there sooner. Chomei first flew around his ship just to intimidate the soldiers a bit, causing many to panic and begin to fire at the giant beetle. Their guns had no effect as his armored carapace was too thick to cause damage, and the cannons they fired at Chomei were deflected by his stinger or blown away by his wings. While going around the ship one more time, Chomei released his scale powder to temporarily blind the soldiers below him. He then moved swiftly in a dive and swatted away many soldiers with his stinger as some crashed into the ship or went flying overboard into the ocean. He flew up and went down again for another strike and managed to knock back some more soldiers, but his stinger was stopped by the leader of this ship with his katana. This leader looked to be more laid back than his counterparts, but he did exude a powerful presence, so it was safe to assume this was one of the vice admirals they were told would be here. He wore an orange suit with a high-ranking officer's coat over it while smoking a cigar. He has a broad chin covered by a beard with a perpetual smile spread across his face, and he kept his eyes closed. Chomei figured that this vice admiral could most likely use observation haki and didn't need to use his eyes to sense him, but even so, Chomei was not done yet. Kurama had been eager to get into the fight, so he made a beeline for the far ship on the right to get started. 4 of the ships on that side saw his aggressive charge and immediately started to aim their cannons towards Kurama. Their bombardment didn't work out for them as he evaded their attacks fairly easily, since he as well as Matabi are the most agile of the Biju. It was child's play to avoid being hit. When he was close enough, he leapt onto the deck of the ship and released another roar in front of the Marines, which the sheer force of it knocked many of them back and a few overboard the ship. Unfortunately for Kurama, there was no vice admiral on this ship, so he had to make do with the soldiers in front of him. More Marines came pouring out from the lower decks to engage Kurama as many fired their guns, and the few captains brave enough engaged him with their swords. He set his tails to work immediately and began knocking back Marines and parrying sword strikes. When he knocked a few Marines off balance, he used his claws to swipe at them, breaking some of their swords and giving several shallow cuts on their torsos, taking them out of the fight. He was really putting the fear of the tailed beasts into the Marines. Kurama then heard the arming of cannons to his left from the ship that was meant for Gyuki, but he had yet to arrive. He heard the order to fire and saw that the ship next to them was opening fire on them. This shocked many of the Marines that one of their own ships would fire on them, even though they knew their primary target was the beast that boarded them. Kurama could see how far these world government officers would go, even sacrificing their own men to win. As the cannonballs were sailing their way, the Marines were shocked at what the beast did, which essentially saved their lives. Kurama breathed out a widespread stream of fire that caused all the cannonballs to explode before they hit the ship, but he didn't stop as he blew the flames further just to show that he did not take kindly to such an act. The flames did not directly hit the ship, but they set the sails and masts aflame, essentially grounding the ship on the ocean with no sails to move it forward. After the Biju left Naruto behind with Nico Robin, Isobu immediately dove beneath the ocean to get to his designated ship. The Biju were taking the ships in order from left to right, but leaving one of the middle ships for Naruto, so Isobu aimed for the third ship from the left. He didn't really enjoy the spotlight, so he wanted to end things quickly. Another part of him just wanted to explore this world's ocean for a bit to see how different it was compared to the other oceans he's seen. As he swam beneath the waters, he had to evade some cannonballs that were sinking beneath the waves. When Isobu came just before the bow of the ship, he used his shadow stroke to attack the vessel from underneath. The soldiers manning the ship had no idea what hit it. The ship shook violently, and they soon heard from the bottom deck that the warship was quickly taking on water. Isobu's deadly spiked barrel roll completely destroyed the keel of the ship from underneath from front to back. Within a few minutes, the front of the ship was already sinking with the rear following suit shortly. The Marines were in utter panic, unsure of what to do. With no vice admiral aboard the ship, the few captains ordered their marines to abandon it while throwing out as many inflatable life rafts as they could. The marines on either warship next to the sinking ship threw out some of their own rafts to help by order of their vice admirals. Isobu also made sure to avoid casualties and kept an eye out for anyone sinking with the ship, including a few devil fruit users who were sinking like stones. He saved them by using low-powered water bullets to shoot anyone out of the ocean and towards a life raft where their comrades could fish them out of the water. Matabi took similar action to Kurama as she ran towards her ship, but whereas he was eager for a fight, Matabi just wanted to run in the open air for a bit, and just like Kurama, she too had to evade cannon fire as many were aimed at her. She was enjoying herself, so she stayed on the ocean for a bit longer, continuously dodging cannon fire as the marines were just wasting their ammunition trying to take down the two-tailed feline. She eventually decided to take action as she released a few dozen blue flaming mice, and they all ran a short distance over the ocean to reach their targets. Matabi was aiming for the cannons on the ships nearest to her, and when the mice reached their destination they all exploded simultaneously, taking out dozens of cannons, rendering them useless. With a portion of their firepower gone, Matabi finally went to fight on the top deck of the second ship. She was met by the usual armed marines as they tried to take her down. Their bullets had no real effect on her and she easily fought off sword users with her own razor-sharp claws. She used her tails to swipe away several marines and used her claws to strike down on a couple of sword users, and her claws managed to break right through them. She went in for a second strike with her claws to take the unarmed men out, but she was intercepted by another sword user using two swords. This was another vice admiral, she could tell because of the strength he possessed, as well as the fact that he did not hesitate to engage her like many others did before him. This man wore a green suit and officer's coat over it, and he wore a marine hat, but his hat was several feet tall, showing that he had an abnormally tall head. His eyes were half closed and he had a long beard and wielded two sabers as he held Matabi back. She was curious to see how well one of these vice admirals fought, but she would take her time with this one, as she wanted to gather information, mostly for Naruto's benefit as he would be fighting more of these men in the future. Kakuo arrived a short distance before her ship moments after Matabi arrived at hers, and wasted little time. She readied herself as steam started emitting from her body. Once she generated enough steam, she ran straight for the ship in a charge and rammed it head first, using her unrivaled strength, actually causing it to fly a short distance back and crash back into the ocean. The ship continued to stay upright, but many marines were sent overboard from the impact. Once it landed, she stopped using her boil release and quickly leapt up onto the deck to fight the soldiers that were left. Her tails immediately swung around wildly, knocking back the marines charging at her. Her hide was thick enough that their bullets couldn't pierce through, so their firearms were ineffective. She charged at a group of marines once again, aiming her horns low to ram them, but before she could hit them, someone stopped her. This man wore a red suit underneath his officer's coat and sported several cross-shaped scars across his face and neck. He was holding a sword across Kokuo's horns, stopping her in her tracks. She as well could tell this was one of the vice admirals leading the buster call, as he was much stronger than the other marines on the ship. It was impressive that he was able to hold her back, but he wouldn't for very long. Kakuo smirked as she began to release her steam again. The vice admiral raised an eyebrow, not really impressed by the steam, but then his eyes widened as she suddenly began her charge again, easily pushing him back. She rammed him through the first mast on the ship, breaking right through it as it fell forward and rolled into the ocean. She continued her charge and crashed through the central structure, destroying a large portion of it as well as the second mast, and crashed through the back and launching the vice admiral through the final mast, leaving the ship useless to sail any longer. The vice admiral was hurt, but he wasn't done yet as he got back up with some difficulty. Kakuo didn't mind though and was prepared for more. Gyuki was the next to arrive at the second-to-last buster call warship, and his appearance is what made the marines the most nervous out of the Biju. Usually any large creatures with tentacles are feared by all seafaring people, or at least they are the source of many negative superstitions that never end well for sailors. Unfortunately for these marines, this old wives' tale would pretty much end up with a similar result. What made things worse is that their sails were completely burned by that fox that was fighting their comrades on the ship next to them, so there would be no way to escape. Gyuki approached the ship calmly while lazily deflecting cannon fire with his tentacles. As he approached, the Marines began to panic and focused their cannon and gunfire heavily on Gyuki in order to drive him away, but his skin was too thick for their bullets and he was fast enough to continue deflecting their cannonballs. He could feel their urgency rising as he got closer and finally began crawling his way up the front of the ship in order to board it. When he boarded the ship and the Marines realized their firearms were useless, they took out their swords to try and fight him head-on. But before they moved to engage him, they were stopped by their commander as he walked through them and spoke. "You are all a disgrace to the Marines. Every last one of you. You never show fear in front of your enemy. It just means you have already lost the battle. Because of this failure, when this is over and if you aren't dead, I want all your resignations on Sengoku's desk the moment we get back. None of you are fit to be Marines." All the Marines on the deck of the ship just stood there in shock of their commander. They couldn't believe they would have to give up their life of a Marine and soldiers of the world government just for showing fear to a beast that would rightfully scare anyone. No one could say anything because they feared a worse punishment, since Vice Admiral Onigumo was one of the hardliners for absolute justice and wouldn't hesitate to kill a subordinate. They were all taken out of their stupor when the beast itself actually spoke up for them. "You would punish your subordinates for something so trivial as showing fear to an enemy? This world government really does need a lesson in leadership." For a moment no one spoke, not quite believing any of these beasts could talk, so they were still trying to process that it could indeed speak, until the Vice Admiral spoke up. "You beasts can speak? Of course we can. Which one of you destroyed the gates of justice? That would be our brother and the one we follow, but he is not like us. He is human, and the real one you have to look out for. If that is true, then he is no human. He is a monster that must be put down for defying absolute justice. Destroying those gates is a declaration of war on the world government. I don't think he really cares about that, but the only monsters that we can see here are those who blindly follow your world government's foolish leaders. Creatures like you couldn't possibly understand the concept of true justice. It is your own government that doesn't understand the meaning of justice. HMPH, there is no point talking to an animal." "My thoughts exactly." Onigumo grabbed two sabers from his waist with his hands, and from behind him, 6 spider-like arms that grew from his hair came out, each holding a saber of their own. The Vice Admiral quickly engaged the 8-tailed Biju, but he would find it would be a far more difficult battle than he would want to believe. Calmly approaching the 4th warship was Son Goku. He wasn't really looking forward to this little skirmish, but being able to show these humans his prowess wasn't something he would pass up. He looked on as his siblings were just getting started, or in some cases had already finished their fights. Overall, he wasn't really impressed with these humans' way of fighting, especially when they first started to bombard them from afar without any sort of provocation. He thought it was cowardly, but it wouldn't be the first time he thought so lowly of humans. As he got to the ship, he climbed his way up the front to get aboard, and all the Marines on the deck opened fire with their rifles and pistols, unloading a barrage of bullets. Sun just held up one of his arms to block his face, but they otherwise didn't do anything to harm him. When they took out their swords is when Sun was more pumped to fight. He let out another roar in their faces and charged forward, knocking away everyone in front of him with his arms and tails. One very tall and strong-looking Marine tried to take him on, thinking his strength was superior, but he found that it wasn't when he was punched through the mast of the ship. The mast was falling towards Sun, but he was able to catch it, and with his strength he plunged it into the ship, stabbing it deep within the lower decks. The ship was now sporting its forward mast at a forward angle, making it look like it had a horn sticking out. When Sun went to engage them further, another person walked out in front of him several feet away, impeding his path. From the coat he wore and the stronger feeling Sun was getting from this one, he could tell it was one of those vice admirals. This man had the sides of his head shaved while sporting a mohawk and mustache. He wore a white and purple pinstripe suit and carried a katana with him that he pulled out to face Son Goku. Sun finally felt that he would get a better challenge out of this one and was actually looking forward to this battle now. Seiken was the last of the Biju to get to his designated ship, taking his time at a leisurely pace. Like Isobu, Seiken didn't really want any of the spotlight, so he wasn't going to take too long with this one. The cannon fire coming at him began to annoy the giant slug, and when he got close enough he sprayed a stream of acid on all the cannons of the ship that immediately melted the front of their barrels, making them useless. Seiken began slowly crawling up the front of the ship to get on the deck to quickly put an end to this. The six-tailed beast never really enjoyed killing, so when Naruto had told them not to kill anyone he was rather relieved and decided to use a non-lethal attack to defeat these soldiers. Over his many years, Seiken has developed many forms of attacks using different chemical compounds that he has come in contact with, learning to recreate them from his own body. He could make chemical attacks ranging from the extremely lethal to the mildly irritating. Now thinking of one such compound, Seiken inhaled deeply and blew out a cloud of orange gas that completely enveloped the entire ship, making sure his attack seeped into the lower levels of the ship, so everyone aboard was affected. None of the soldiers knew what hit them, but it hit them hard. The first reaction they gave was a burning of the eyes, so much so that many started yelling out in pain trying to rub their eyes to make it go away. When they inhaled the gas, things became worse. Everyone experienced a shortness of breath as it felt like their lungs were burning, and many others began to vomit as their stomachs couldn't take it. The gas didn't linger for too long, but the damage was already done. These Marines wouldn't die from the gas, but they would be in quite some pain for the next couple of hours. After running across the ocean for a few minutes, Naruto made it to the only ship that had yet to be engaged and jumped onto the deck. As he landed, he dropped Spandam, and making sure he stayed put, he grew a stockade that connected to the ship while it kept his head and hands tightly secured. There was no way to open the stockade as it was all one piece of wood that gave Spandam no room to try and escape, so he had no choice but to stand there and watch everything. Of course that didn't stop him from yelling at all the Marines on the ship to try and save him, and as there were no vice admirals aboard this ship, he was technically the highest ranking officer there. "Quick, kill him and save me. He's in control of all of those beasts and was the one to destroy the gates. If you kill him, then the rest will fall. Hurry up." The Marines didn't hesitate and immediately began attacking Naruto, but since Spandam was right next to him, they didn't fire their guns so not to risk hitting their commander. They came at him with swords and fists and other types of weapons to try and quickly kill him. Unfortunately, these Marines just weren't anywhere close to his level, and Naruto easily defended himself and countered their attacks. Within a few minutes, over 30 Marines were either unconscious or on the floor groaning in pain from the beating they were given. As more Marines began to surround him, they were looking at him more warily, trying to find an opening, while Naruto stood there in a defensive stance waiting for more to attack him. They were starting to take too long to attack for Naruto, so he decided to go on the offensive. The Marines were so concentrated on Naruto that they were all surprised when he suddenly disappeared, and a large group of them were simultaneously knocked back. From that point on, Naruto was just a blur as he ran through everyone around him, taking them down in 1 or 2 shots. He didn't stop at just the upper deck, he took his rampage to the lower decks, going through every room defeating everyone along the way. Naruto was a little too reckless as he accidentally set off an explosive near the ammunition storage and blew up a giant chunk off the rear of the ship. He managed to save anyone from getting killed by quickly using his wood release to cover everyone near the explosion, including himself. Robin was watching everything from Naruto's perspective. She couldn't see much except for when he slowed down on occasion to look at his handiwork. She could, however, hear all the pained cries of the soldiers, the sounds of fists, feet, and bodies hitting, and the sounds of bones breaking. She could clearly tell that these Marines were heavily outclassed. She knows the heavy hitters of her own crew, in Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, could handle this much, as they proved earlier as they ran their own gauntlet of fights with the Marines and world government agents. However, she felt that, aside from the destructive attack he unleashed on the gates, this man's physical capabilities were also on a different level from her 3 strongest crew members. As far as she could tell, he sustained no injuries, and wasn't even fatigued or breathing hard after moving and fighting so fast. She was surprised when a giant explosion went off, and thought he might have been severely hurt or killed since her vision suddenly went black. She noticed that she wasn't in any pain, though as any part of her body that she blooms can be injured and cause her real body pain. She could definitely hear the ringing in her ears though, as he was near the epicenter of the explosion, but she wasn't in any real pain. She became a bit relieved as she saw a wall of wood open up to the sunlight, showing that he had managed to shield himself with that unique wood ability. Another group of Marines came from behind in the lower levels to try and sneak attack him, but he was well aware of his surroundings and he beat them off soundly. After about 20 minutes of fighting, it looked like his battle was over, and from what she could see from her own vantage point on the bridge, those beasts that he released were finished as well, as they began to approach him. From what she could see, none of the warships looked to be in any condition to sail. Many of their masts were destroyed, 3 of them were sunk outright as she could see many lifeboats on the ocean with them still pulling out their men. She never thought there would be a day where a buster call could be defeated, let alone so thoroughly. She observed a little longer and watched and listened as the Biju stood in front of Naruto and conversed rather animatedly with each other for several minutes and was glad to hear that the buster call was truly over, without them even getting a chance to bombard the island itself. After a few moments, dread suddenly filled her as she heard a distinct voice and the famous expression that she could never forget. Urara, gasp. No. No 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 no. Robin. Robin was cut off from her sudden panic attack as her concentration was broken and the eye and ear she had on Naruto faded away into flower petals. It wasn't too long after the explosion that Naruto had defeated everyone on the ship. By this time all the Biju were already finished with their ships as well and they joined back with Naruto at the rear of the ship where the giant hole was and he was just sitting on one of the lower decks looking out at the ocean. Did you all enjoy yourselves? I sure as hell did, even though I couldn't kill anyone. I crushed some bones and left a bunch of them in sand coffins. Ha ha ha, it was hilarious. It'll take them hours to dig each other out. Did you at least give them some air to breathe? Yeah, they can breathe just fine. Good. What's wrong with you, Kurama? Why are you sulking? Haha. It's because he didn't get to fight anyone strong, said Gyuki. All I had was a bunch of weaklings. I asked Gyuki to give me his fight but he wouldn't let me. You were practically finished with your ship by the time I started on mine. And besides, he had 8 arms and I have 8 tails, I thought it was fitting. Wait, didn't you sink your ship? If they were so weak, why did you feel it necessary to sink the whole thing? 'Cause they just kept coming and coming to annoy me with their weakness. I got tired of it and cracked the ship in half, so what? We still gotta control that temper of yours. Bite me. No thanks, too much fur. Isobu, I noticed you took care of yours in no time at all. Were you really in a hurry to go exploring? Maybe. Isobu just sank lower into the water to avoid eye contact, embarrassed he was so easily found out. Anyone have any interesting encounters? The vice admirals are very strong. Far stronger than their subordinates, the difference in strength is quite substantial. Said Kakuo, she didn't elaborate further as she was only making an observation. The others who fought a vice admiral in Matabi, Son Goku, Chomei, and Gyuki were all in agreement as their fights with the superior officers were much more challenging than their fights with the lower-tier marines. The one I fought was an extremist of their government. Kept saying things about absolute justice, and how the ends justify the means. He wasn't above shooting his own men if he thought they were out of line. I thought about killing him but I held myself back. But I made sure he'll be out of commission for some time. Said Gyuki. That was pretty much the same with mine. He also said things about absolute justice and the like. Not a very compassionate man. Said Kakuo. I see. So there's a lot of people in their government like Spandam. Probably means it goes even higher in the ranks too. Bunch of idiots. The man I fought wasn't all that bad. He had some concern over his subordinates at least. Wasn't too arrogant from what I could tell. Said Matabi. At least that means they're not all bad apples. I'd hate to believe that every single person in this government is a complete asshole. Urara. The Biju in front of Naruto moved aside to allow the newcomer to be in view of Naruto. They knew he was coming as they could feel the power he held from miles away, but they didn't need him or his government to know that they could sense them coming. The less they knew about their abilities the better. The man was very tall with a short afro, tan-skinned, wearing a white vest and pants with a purple buttoned shirt. He was riding a bike along an icy road that he created. From the moment he stopped in front of them, the ice was spreading out, freezing the surrounding ocean including the legs of the Biju who were standing on it, but they made no move, making the man think he had them trapped, as they knew Naruto wanted to handle this. They could all see his eyes roaming to get a good look at all the Biju in front of him, but his expression never changed to show that he was surprised or worried. Then his eyes fell to Naruto being the only human that was actually interacting with these beasts. This is a surprise. To think the first time anyone tried to take on a Buster Call, it would be so utterly defeated. Don't worry, no one's dead. Yet. I suppose I should thank you for that. Should be less paperwork. Who are you? Uzumaki Naruto. A great and powerful sage come to spread peace and goodwill to all. he said in an overly grandiose fashion with a grin on his face and arms spread out wide. Is that supposed to be funny? From my view, you have just declared war on the world government, and prevented the capture of a dangerous woman that must be brought to justice. Where is your so-called peace in this? Some lessons must be learned the hard way, I'm afraid. And I'm sorry, but Nico Robin has endured enough crimes against her in her lifetime by your world government. I cannot allow any more to befall her. She is the criminal here. What crime could an 8-year-old child commit to deserve a bounty of 79 million? Your silence is very compelling, I'm totally convinced. You don't know what that woman is capable of, what she's after. It doesn't matter, you're not touching her or her friends. What is your relation to the Straw Hat Pirates? You weren't with them the last time I encountered them. I'm not a part of their crew if that's what you're asking. In fact, I haven't even met any of them aside from Robin, and I just met her today. And I'm sorry to say, but I'm not looking to join them either. I have my own agenda that probably doesn't coincide with theirs. And what is this agenda of yours? You'll find out soon enough. You know, I didn't catch your name. Aokiji, Marine Admiral. Really? One of the big guns, huh? That's interesting. Now, you have two options here. You can turn around, go back to your headquarters, call for a recovery team to take back all those who are stranded here. Tell your superiors everything you saw. Report the complete failure of the Buster call and failure to capture Nico Robin. And you can go ahead and report me while you're at it, and this whole incident will be over. Or, you can stay here, try to go after Nico Robin, get stopped by me, fight me, get beaten, and then go back to your headquarters, call for a recovery team, tell your superiors everything you saw here. Report the complete failure of the Buster call and failure to capture Nico Robin, report me in every which way I kicked your ass, and then this whole incident will be over. I personally would take the first option, but that's just me. Less painful that way. You really enjoy the sound of your voice, don't you? Well, I do have a lovely voice, don't I? Ice time. Robin. Robin turned around only to be wrapped in a bear hug by Nami and Chopper, both of which were happily crying after finally having their friend back. Zoro, Sanji, Sogeking, Frankie, Kokura, Chimney, and her rabbit Gonbi were coming from behind ready to greet her as well, especially Sanji as he was running towards her with hearts in his eyes. Robin Schwan. Robin was glad to see them all again, but she had to cut the reunion short as there was currently a bigger issue that had to be addressed. Everyone, please listen. Everyone could hear the seriousness in her voice, so they paid extra attention to what she had to say. There's big trouble. What is it, Robin? Is it the Buster call? Is it still coming? Said Nami. No, our abrupt ally and his friends actually seemed to have taken care of it, but... What is it? Said Zoro. It's Aokiji, he's here. Aokiji, yelled out Nami, Sogeking, and Chopper. Shit, that guy's here. None of us could touch him last time, and all of us are beat up right now. Said Sanji. Did you see him? Where is he? Said Zoro. I didn't exactly see him, but I heard him. I know that voice anywhere, and look, the ocean is beginning to freeze. He is confronting that man who helped me. Just beyond the warships. How could you hear him from that far? Asked Nami. I was using my powers to spy on this Naruto while he fought, and I just heard Aokiji's voice before you all came here. Oh, sorry. I guess we distracted you, huh? It's fine, it would have made no difference anyway. What do we do? What do we do? Exclaimed Sogeking as he started freaking out. There's nothing we can do. We saw what that man did to those enormous gates. If there's anyone who can take on a monster like Aokiji, it has to be that guy. 'Cause if he fails, then we're screwed either way. None of us can take on an admiral in our condition, and Luffy's fight isn't over yet. All we can do is wait, said Zoro. Everyone was a little uncomfortable and tense as they didn't like the idea of leaving someone who helped them with a monster like Aokiji. But Zoro was right. They weren't ready for someone like an admiral. Aokiji suddenly appeared behind Naruto with a hand on his shoulder, seemingly completely freezing him on the spot as his entire body was encased in ice. Kurama thought it was funny as they all heard him laugh. Haha, brings back memories, doesn't it, Naruto? The ice surrounding Naruto started cracking as wafts of steam began to emit from his body as he was getting help from Kakuo. The majority of the Biju's chakra was still within him, so he still had access to their abilities. Soon the ice completely shattered, leaving him unharmed. Not any good ones. Why don't you guys hop back in? I'll take care of this one. HMPH. Always taking the good fights for yourself. Come on, Kurama. For any fight to be good for you, you'd have to hold back anyway. said Matabi. Whatever, I feel like taking a nap. Don't worry Kurama, this world is huge, you'll get plenty of chances. Aokiji was a little surprised his attack didn't work, which must mean this man was far more powerful than he first thought. He turned and listened to their conversation, talking as if he wasn't even there, which kind of irked him as well. Then he saw all 9 of these beasts suddenly break down into wisps of energy that floated towards the man that was still just sitting there on the broken deck right next to him. He saw as the energy flowed into him and the presence of each beast completely vanished from his senses, which should be impossible since he could feel the power emanating from each one, and they weren't weak. How can those monsters be inside you? Those monsters are my family, call them that again and you won't be getting out of here under your own power. They have more humanity in them than some humans, which I'm sure you can personally attest to. Yes, I've seen thousands of the worst criminals brought to justice, many by me personally. Just like I'm about to do to you. The criminals weren't the ones I was talking about. Aokiji remained silent for a moment, having a sense of what Naruto may be referring to, but he couldn't speak out against the nobles because of his position in the world government. You realize I cannot allow you to roam free from here. Yeah, I think I got that when you tried to freeze me. Well, don't let me keep you from trying to do your job. You can start again anytime you're ready. Aokiji did not hesitate as he tried to freeze Naruto again with the intent to break his frozen body before he had a chance to get out this time. Naruto was a step ahead of him, however, as he was quickly gone from his spot on the broken deck and out on the frozen ocean facing the admiral. Soon after, Aokiji formed 4 tridents made of ice floating in front of him and launched them at Naruto. Naruto dodged them by jumping away, but as soon as he landed, Aokiji was right in front of him, aiming to grab him and freeze him again. Naruto evaded him and threw a punch in his gut but was a bit surprised when his hand entered his body without damage and Aokiji grabbed hold of his wrist with both hands as his ice began spreading. You can't escape me twice. You'll come to learn I can be very stubborn. Now, take a deep breath. Naruto inhaled deeply and let out an intense stream of fire at point-blank range aimed at the admiral's upper body. The ice immediately began melting away, and as he felt Aokiji's grip fall, he stopped the stream of fire and saw a cloud of ice forming a short distance away, seeing the admiral come into shape. I was not aware there was another devil fruit with fire properties. I'm sure there are a lot of things you're not aware of. This time Aokiji made an ice saber in his hands, deciding to fight Naruto and defeat him that way. Aokiji launched at Naruto swinging his saber trying to defeat him, but Naruto's speed made it easy enough for him to evade all his strikes. Naruto figured that he must be a Logia-type devil fruit user that Hancock and her sisters told him about, since he couldn't hit him directly without some sort of boost. He didn't want to reveal his sage modes this soon, so he decided to try out a different method to see if it would work. Naruto began generating yin release throughout his body, hoping that it would have the same effect of haki, in which the sisters also told him was capable of being used to fight Logia users as well. He soon found his hunch to be correct as he evaded another strike and went in for a sweeping kick that knocked the admiral on his back. This surprised Aokiji even more, since that kick should have just passed through him, but he instead was laid out on the ice he created. Since Naruto's spiritual energy was being heightened through yin release, it allowed him to be able to fight back, but unlike Sage Mode, it wouldn't drain a devil fruit user of their powers, so he still had that little trump card to play if he needed it. This kid can use haki at his age? As Aokiji stood up, he now knew he had to be more serious about this fight. If his opponent can fully utilize haki to fight back, then he was even more dangerous than he realized. He couldn't afford to play around with him like he did with the Straw Hats, but still, he noticed that Naruto didn't take advantage of his down position to try and finish him, so he knew he was being underestimated. Why didn't you attack me when you had the advantage? I don't want to kick a man when he's down. That's just rude. You won't get another chance like that again. We'll see about that. Naruto took out a kunai for each hand so that it would be easier to engage the admiral's sword, and soon after they renewed their fight. The 2 veteran soldiers engaged each other at an even higher speed than before as they clashed on the ice, appearing in different spots within moments. Aokiji was getting frustrated because after each clash he put more speed and strength behind each new encounter, but this boy was keeping up with him easily. Naruto decided that he wanted to keep as much of his strength in the dark from the world government as he could, so he just wanted to match the admiral hit for hit and win a battle of attrition. Their fight brought them between two of the warships that were stuck in the frozen ocean, and they continued to attack and counter each other. Naruto's kunai began freezing since their early clashes, and after a few more strikes the blades finally shattered. Aokiji thought he had an opening and went for an overhead strike. Naruto suddenly went inside his guard and delivered a heavy spin kick to his midsection. Aokiji yelled in pain as he was sent crashing straight through the side of a warship and out on the other side, bouncing and skidding along the ice and finally hitting the outer hull of another warship. Naruto was soon to follow and appeared before him as he was standing up. As soon as Aokiji was on his feet, Naruto was once again in front of him and punched him and broke through the hull, where they began fighting again inside the ship. Many of the soldiers who were barely regaining their bearings from their fight with one of the Biju were surprised as their ship was rocked with massive shock waves and was being frozen and destroyed from the inside as the admiral and his unknown assailant continued to fight. Their fighting ended up cracking the warship in half, rendering it useless, but since the ocean was frozen the ship wouldn't sink for some time. They fought like this for a while, exchanging blows, as their fight moved them to other ships, and those too were destroyed even more throughout their fight. They finally ended up on their fifth ship on the top deck and backed away from each other to catch their breaths. Naruto was sporting a few cuts on his chest and arms and a gash over his brow, that were frozen over from Aokiji's sword, and unknowingly, to Aokiji, had already healed, but other than that he was still ready to continue. On the surface, Aokiji was just showing some scuff marks, but what they couldn't see beneath his clothing was some bad bruising on his skin, including a few of his ribs that made it hard for him to breathe. He was breathing heavily and in some pain, even though he wouldn't show it on his face. This was easily one of the hardest fights he has been in since he was a young captain patrolling the seas. No one since then has ever pushed him this far. Who are you? Didn't we have this conversation? There's no way someone as strong as you could have stayed off the world government's radar for as long as you have. Why show yourself now? I have recently been made aware of several severe injustices made by your government. Nico Robin. She isn't the only one. Idealism has no place in this world. Do you really believe that, or is that what your superiors tell you? Our government exists to enforce justice. You mean to spread fear? I hear there's a revolution going on. Did you ever wonder why that is? Are you part of the Revolutionary Army? No, but I think they have the right idea. There's something wrong with your government, and I'm not the only one who sees it. Do you think you can fight the world government on your own? I think I'm doing pretty good right now. I am not the entirety of the world government. There will be others standing in your way. I can handle them. Show me. In an unspoken agreement, the two fighters appeared a distance away from the warships on the frozen ocean, knowing this would be their final clash and not wanting to cause unneeded casualties. They could feel each other generating a ridiculous amount of power, and Naruto saw what looked to be an enormous bird made of ice forming above the admiral. Naruto was still matching the power output of Aokiji and then raised his right hand to perform one of his signature techniques. A massive Rasengan formed within moments, matching the size of the frozen bird above his hand, but he wasn't done just yet. Soon after, 4 big ball Rasengans began orbiting the giant Rasengan as if they were moons orbiting a planet. Aokiji looked on with a serious expression as he didn't know what to make of this man. He attacked me with fire earlier, but this just looks like pure energy. A devil fruit should not give someone 2 separate abilities. What is he? That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.